Carols. We've done O Little Town of Bethlehem and Joy to the World, and Angels We Have Heard on High. We're going to do a different animal each of the 4 weeks of Advent. We're going to talk about the gift that the animal gives to the Holy Family, and then how Christ gives that gift to us, and then how we can give that gift to others. The gift that the donkey gives is, carrying. I carried his mother uphill and down. I carried his mother to Bethlehem town. Carried, I'm going to interpret as support. I supported them. You carried me through this hard time. You supported me. Before I get into how the donkey carried and supported, it's kind of obvious how the donkey supported Mary, I want to talk about Psalm 80. Psalm 80 seems to be the complete opposite. It seems to be written by a person who does not feel carried by God, who does not feel supported by God. In fact, the psalmist thinks God is their problem. God, you have done this. God, you are not listening. God, you are not hearing. God, you are not seeing us. The person is actually either depressed or hopeless or angry. They're lecturing God. God, stir up your might. We know you can do this, so do it. You don't see us. You don't hear us. How often do we feel that we're not heard and not seen? Now, Colleen just had that experience 10 minutes ago, didn't she? She gave that announcement, and who heard her? 3 people, 4. Okay, now you put your hands up. Yeah. We're not heard. We're not seen. I remember when our kids were little, Megan, a playmate of our older daughter, came to the door, and I went to the door. It was in the summer, and I just stood there in the doorway with the screen door there, and Megan kind of looked. Is anybody home? And I said, I'm here. Oh, I didn't see you. How often do people not return our phone calls? How often do they not return emails or answer letters? And we feel like we just don't matter. We just don't count. And at a point, we give up. Well, I'm not gonna contact that person anymore. They're not listening. They don't care. We have that experience frequently of not being seen, not being heard, not mattering. What about God? What about God? Do we ever feel not heard and not seen by God? Many of us are too polite to confront God and say what we really feel, that God, you're not listening, God. You are deaf. You are not answering this prayer, and for God's sake, God, you can fix this. You have the capability to stir up your might and fix this. Get moving, God. Restore us. Bring us to life. Save us. See us. We're too polite to act that way. But this psalm is not that polite. It's kind of audacious. It's kind of raw. This psalm is the opposite of Psalm 23, where, the Lord is my shepherd, says 23. 80 says, the Lord isn't my shepherd. 23 says, God makes me to lie down beside still waters. When I walk through the valley of death, God is with me. Psalm 80 says, God isn't with me. Which psalm is more accurate often to our experience? The presence of God or the absence of God? We don't feel carried. is this a psalm of faith or a lack of faith? I think it's a psalm of faith. The person in the midst of their darkness continues to turn to God for hope, continues to badger God, continues to expect God to do something. You know, often the person to whom we turn in the times of darkness indicates the person in whom we hope. This person hopes in God. Several weeks ago, I heard a denominational leader complain about our ministers who seemed to be deaf and blind to Ohio resuming executions and immigration problems in our country. And this denominational leader said, "Not one person has contacted me. Nobody's concerned about this." And I thought, why would I contact you? You're not the one that's going to fix it. If I'm concerned about the death penalty, I contact the governor. He's the one that can stop it. He's the one I turn to. He's the one I hope in. If I'm concerned about immigration, I don't turn to this denominational leader. I turn to my senators and my representatives. They're the ones that can do something. You know, who we hope in our darkness is the one that we cry out to. This is a psalm of faith. It's audacious, but it's a psalm of faith, of crying in the darkness. And the person is actually crying to be carried. Restore me. Save me. Give me life. Support me. It's often in the darkness that we discover the light in our lives. What we sang as a response to the candle lighting. In the darkness, the light shines, and the darkness will not overcome it. It's when we acknowledge our darkness that we realize the presence and the light and the support of God. You think of a plant that grows, a seed that's planted. You don't see the seed, it's underground, it's in the dark. But life is there, and life is growing. And in the darkness, we see the light. When I was in college, I lived, it was probably a 12, 14-hour drive from home. So I didn't go home very often. And my roommate's family in Hartford became my home away from home. And on long weekends or at holidays, Thanksgiving and Passover, I would go with Jonathan to his family. And Hartford was about four hours away from Hanover. And Jonathan and I would often hitchhike to Hanover, to Hartford, have the holiday, spend the holiday with his family, which they were very generous, they were very loving, it was great. And then on Sunday afternoon, Jonathan's mother would take us halfway to Hanover, drop us off at the exit ramp at Northampton, Massachusetts, and we would hitchhike the rest of the way. My mother would have died had she known that. And after Thanksgiving in New England, in northern New England, the sun sets about 2 o'clock, it seems. And the weather can get pretty raw. And there were times that Jonathan and I would be hitching there at the Northampton exit, And cars would just go by us, and we'd, give us a ride, give us a ride. And it would be getting dark, and the weather would be starting to get cold, and the snow would start, and it would be a wet snow, and we would be soaked, and, we were hopeless, and it just felt miserable, and we just felt abandoned and forsaken at this exit ramp. And, what are we going to do? And give us a ride, give us a ride. And people would blow their horns and wave and go, Well, obviously we'd get a ride because I'm here. And that car would hear us, and it would slow down, and Jonathan and I would run to that car and, thank you, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. You've saved us. I mean, we probably used that language. And we'd get that ride to Hanover, and, we'd be carried to Hanover. The light in the darkness was that car. Now I'm ready to talk about the donkey. I carried his mother uphill and down. I carried his mother to Bethlehem town. I, said the donkey, shaggy and brown. To be carried, I see that there are at least two, maybe three components. One is we cry out. We acknowledge our darkness and we cry out for our need. I need help. Save me, restore me, support me. Shine in my darkness. And then we need to be heard, and we need to be seen. And when we're heard and seen, we do feel carried, and we do feel supported, and we do feel connected, and we do feel the presence of the other person. I carried his mother uphill and down. I carried his mother to Bethlehem down. It doesn't say Mary cried out, but I can imagine her saying something like, "Can we take the donkey? It would help me." Or, "Joseph, get off the donkey and let me ride." Mary cried out. And she was heard, and she was seen, and she was carried. How often did Jesus have people cry out to him? The blind men. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. The lepers. Jesus, have mercy on us. Jesus' life was a series of people crying out to him, and his seeing and hearing him. He sees Zacchaeus in the tree. He sees the hungry people. He hears and sees the demoniac. Jesus' life was hearing and seeing and then carrying people and supporting them and being present to them and letting know that they mattered, that they were significant. And us. Some of us are here today because we've been seen and heard, and we feel carried by this church. Other of us might be here to cry out so that we are seen and we are heard in the hope that we will be carried by this church. AA is a classic example of people being carried, isn't it? One comes to the meeting and says, "I'm John. I'm an alcoholic." That is crying out. And the group responds, "Hi, John." They're heard and they're supported and they get a sponsor. they're carried. The hope is in the group. I mean, I think we can all tell stories of where we've been in the darkness and we've cried out and someone has been the light to carry us. I remember when we were going through family problems in Middletown when the kids were younger. And I just went to the staff of the church and said, I'm going to have a lot of trouble doing my job right now. Can you help me? And they pitched in. It was in none of their job descriptions to help me, but they pitched in, the secretary and the bookkeeper and the organist and the associate minister. The light in the darkness that carries us and supports us and connects us to life and restores us. All the things the psalmist is looking for. And we give that gift of hearing and seeing and being the light in the darkness to someone else. This carol is not theologically deep. It's about cows and donkeys and sheep. What's the last one, a bird? Dove. Yeah, it's a bird. I was right. It just wasn't specific. It's not theologically deep. It doesn't sing about the incarnate deity. It doesn't sing about laying the Godhead aside. It's just about a donkey carrying Jesus' mother. It's about gifts of support and generosity and hospitality and affection. We might not know about the incarnate deity and the offspring of the virgin's womb and how to explain that. But we do know about supporting people. We do know about carrying people. We do know about seeing them and hearing them. I mean, this is a carol for all of us. This is the season of gift giving. And we go online and we go to stores looking for elaborate gifts. And the gift starts with crying out and seeing and hearing and being a light in someone's darkness. And our being seen and heard and having the light in our darkness. It's a great carol. It's a great carol because it applies to all of us. And it does bring us what Christmas gift giving is about. May it be so.